Welcome to the second video in our Dyslexia series, Reading Development and Dyslexia. This video series was developed through a partnership between the Georgia Department of Education and the Mary Frances Early College of Education at the University of Georgia. In this video, we will examine the relationship between reading development and dyslexia. To do this, we will address three questions. How do individuals learn to read? What is the relationship between instruction and students' reading outcomes? And why do some students experience persistent difficulty in learning to read? How do individuals learn to read? First, what we can all observe is that learning to speak comes naturally for most children. Young children are surrounded by language and they learn to talk. In contrast, being surrounded by print does not result in students' mastery of reading and spelling. As children grow, they develop language and acquire quite a vocabulary. The typical 4-year-old knows over 1,000 words but hasn't even begun the formal process of learning to read. For young children to understand what reading is, they need to figure out the relationship between the words they hear and use every day with the writing system that was invented to record that language. For alphabetic languages like English, this understanding is called the alphabetic principle. The alphabetic principle is the understanding that words are composed of letters that represent sounds. Dyslexia is characterized by difficulties with word recognition. To get a clearer picture of what this means, let's return to the simple view of reading that was introduced in the first video. For individuals to understand what they are reading, the word must be identified, and meaning must be connected to the word. For example, a reader recognizes DOG is the word dog and attaches the meaning of the word dog, a furry four-legged animal, to the word. There is general agreement that there are two paths to word recognition. Words are either automatically recognized or decoded. When you recognize a whole word instantly, that is automatic word recognition. For skilled readers, almost all words are read instantly from memory by sight. Young kids may also automatically recognize words from their environment, but this recognition is different from the automatic word recognition of older, skilled readers. The automatic word recognition of young children is called logographic or pictorial word recognition. In these cases, if the logo and familiar colors are changed to standard print, young children can no longer read the word. In contrast, the sight word vocabulary of adults, which can be 30,000 to 60,000 words, is different from that of young children. How did this impressive sight word vocabulary develop? Through decoding, the second, more laborious path to word recognition. When we ask a student to sound out a word, we are asking them to engage in decoding. Beginning readers will move letter by letter or letter pattern by letter pattern through a word. Similarly, when experienced readers encounter a new word, they also engage in decoding. More experienced readers can move past letter by letter decoding to mapping larger units of speech to letter patterns. For example, an older, skilled reader might decode an unfamiliar word like cyanobacterium by sounding it out syllable by syllable. The experienced reader will even pronounce TER as tear by making the automatic and subconscious connection to the base word bacteria. What happens in the brain as a word is decoded is called orthographic mapping. Orthographic mapping occurs when readers form connections between written units, spoken units, and meaning. Through orthographic mapping, these three things, written units, spoken units, and meaning, are bonded together. Many individuals only need to decode a word a handful of times before the three elements are bonded. After that point, the sight of the word automatically activates the pronunciation and meaning of the word. The reader will then recognize the word instantaneously regardless of the shape or size of the word. This demonstrates that readers are not relying on a visual memory of the shape of the whole word, like the young child recognizing the word stop. Instead, they have bonded the individual letters with the pronunciation of the word. Once readers understand letter-sound relationships and can apply a decoding strategy to identify words, they will use this knowledge to decode novel words, thus activating orthographic mapping and the development of a growing sight word vocabulary. Unfortunately, many students encounter difficulty in acquiring and building these reading skills. What is the relationship between instruction and students' reading outcomes? To better understand the relationship between reading development and student learning, we can look to the ladder of reading and writing developed by Nancy Young. At the top rungs of the ladder are the small percentage of students who seem to intuitively understand the alphabetic principle. For this 5 to 10% of students, learning to read seems effortless. The next group of students down the ladder is much larger, 35%. For these students, learning to read is relatively easy, but they require direct teaching of letter-sound relationships to support accurate spelling. This leaves 50 to 60% of students at the bottom rungs of the ladder. These students require direct teaching of decoding. For 40 to 45% of students, strong decoding instruction helps them unlock the alphabetic principle and puts them on the path to reading. Unfortunately, if these students do not receive the instruction they need, they will not be good readers. Finally, at the bottom rungs of the ladder, we find students who experience significant, persistent difficulty learning to read. Students with dyslexia fall into this final category. These students require systematic, intensive instruction to address their reading needs. What can we learn from the ladder of reading and writing? The ladder reveals what two reading researchers, Catherine Snow and Connie Jewell, concluded after reviewing studies on reading development, reading instruction, and reading teachers. Attention to small units in early reading instruction is helpful for all children, harmful for none, and crucial for some. Of course, reading is not simply word recognition. In addition, word recognition does not occur in isolation from language comprehension. Knowledge of language and word meaning can facilitate word recognition. The simple view of reading serves as an excellent reminder that attention to decoding, those small parts of words, and attention to language comprehension are both critical for the development of competent readers. Why do some students experience persistent difficulty in learning to read? The development of reading ability is influenced by a variety of factors: genetic, neural, cognitive, and environmental. All of these factors can influence the expression of dyslexia. This means that for an individual child, there may be risk factors that increase the likelihood of reading difficulty. These risk factors could include a parent with dyslexia, attention or working memory limitations, difficulty acquiring and using language, or difficulty with phonology. In addition to risk factors, each child can also have protective factors. These factors can be internal, such as strengths in cognitive skills, or external, such as early language exposure, early reading experiences, and high-quality early instruction. As you can see, reading is a complex behavior that is influenced over time by a variety of factors. Therefore, at any point in time, students may fall into different places on a reading continuum. A student who is predisposed for dyslexia due to a parent having dyslexia, but received exceptional early reading instruction may appear here on the continuum. In contrast, a student who has multiple and more severe risk factors may appear here on the spectrum and need specialized services. Which brings us back to the original question: why do some students experience persistent difficulty learning to read? The short answer is that dyslexia is the result of a combination of internal and external factors and the interaction of these factors over time. The good news is that what we know from the ladder of reading and writing is that instruction can play an important role in moving students up the reading continuum. Let's review. Why is learning to read more difficult than learning to talk? Learning to read requires an understanding of the alphabetic principle, that words are composed of letters that represent speech sounds. Learning to read, therefore, requires learning how to translate or decode writing into language. What skills do students need to understand what they are reading? For students to understand what they are reading, a word must be recognized and meaning must be connected to the word. How is an automatic sight word vocabulary acquired? Automatic recognition of words develops through a process called orthographic mapping. Orthographic mapping occurs when readers form connections across written parts of words, spoken units, and word meaning. What can be learned from the ladder of reading and writing? Beginning reading instruction that includes direct teaching of the code can help students progress in their reading and spelling abilities, and intensive direct teaching of the code is essential for students with dyslexia. Is there one thing that causes dyslexia? No. Genetic, neural, and cognitive factors can increase the probability of dyslexia, but protective factors can mitigate the effects of dyslexia. Early intervention, for example, can be particularly helpful for improving reading ability. Funding for the Dyslexia series was provided by the Georgia General Assembly. The content was developed by Dr. Kristen Sajewski from the University of Georgia. Permission to use the ladder of reading and writing was generously provided by Nancy Young. For more information about dyslexia, be sure to check out the other videos in the series.